Spirit of God in the clear running water, blowing to greatness the trees on the hill. Spirit of God in the finger of morning, fill the earth, bring it to birth, and blow where you will. Blow, blow, blow till I be but breath of the Spirit blowing in me.
Hello, welcome to the Spirit of Life. My name is Lucy Pace, and tonight we have with us again John Hendricks. John was with us last week in last week's program, where he shared with us aspects of his life journey, and we came to the point where John was sharing the moment where he had experienced a turnaround point and a reawakening in the spirit. Hello, John. Welcome back. It's good to see you again.
Thank you, Lucy. It is nice to be here.
John, last week you might recall that we finished at the point where you shared with us that you had someone come into your life and you had an encounter or an experience or a reawakening of your spirit. But before you go into that, perhaps for those viewers that didn't hear your interview last week, you might like to just give us a brief journey or snapshots or snippets of your life up to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Well, we arrived in Australia, migrated from Egypt in 1971, I think, 1970. So I was about 4 or 5 years of age, just with my mother. I'd lost my biological father, and my mother remarried about 13 years later. And I was married to a lovely lady at about the age of 21. We had 2 children and had a very full-on life with work and personal commitments and home life. And then found myself in a divorce situation at the age of about 35, and was single for a couple of years, and then met Nicole, my current wife, and restarted my life again. Pretty much that's more or less what we discussed last time I was here.
I also remember you mentioning that you launched into your career when you were about 19 years old.
Yes.
I don't know if you mentioned that in your briefing.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. I must have missed it, sorry. But you launched into your career, and as a result of you pursuing a career and becoming very successful in real estate and developing properties, you had a marriage failure based on that.
Yes.
Lifestyle.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, it's largely due to the fact that I was married young and had a lot of commitments and pressures that go along with marriage and business from a young age.
Okay.
And not having the experience or not having, as I know now, not having a relationship with God. Unfortunately, other influences in your life do tend to take control of that.
So you met Nicole and you remarried and you now have a little boy.
Yes.
Delightful little boy, I believe.
Yes.
By the name of Noah.
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct. Yes. Noah's 3. He's going to be 3 in a few weeks' time. And it's Nicole's 40th birthday today, so I'll give her a happy birthday wish for today.
Yes, happy birthday, Nicole. Yes, John. And okay, so you concluded the interview last week in saying that you had encountered some spiritual reawakening. Can you share that with us and just give us a little bit more of an insight into what happened?
Sure, absolutely. Just leading up to that, I think it's important to probably mention the fact that I had been lost after my marriage breakdown. I had been lost and searching and looking for more in life, a settling down life and looking for the truth, I guess, in my actions. And I asked God to introduce me to somebody, and that's when Nicole came into my life within a matter of a couple of weeks of asking. But as we spoke last week, I could see traits of the previous experience with my first marriage starting to unfold again in my second marriage. And I was conscious of that, and I was concerned, even though I had made a shift back to God and I had started going to church. I could still see that my faith wasn't totally solid. So it was at that point that a friend of mine had noticed that I was still searching, and she asked me if I would like to have a closer relationship with God, a closer relationship with Jesus. And I said, why not? I had nothing else to go for. I had nothing else to lose. I guess I was at that point, of my life where I had got together with Nicole and we started off our life together. But as I said, I was starting to drift, and Noah was born, and thank God he was a gift from us. But at the time he was born, I guess I was just thinking about myself and having to devote myself to a new child and my life to a new child again, and wasn't thinking about the happiness that he brought at that point. But when the introduction to Jesus was made, it was almost instant. It was like an instant healing. It's difficult to explain, but my friend asked me if I wished to have a closer relationship with God, and I asked, what does that mean? And she said, well, it's like having your best friend with you, next to you, in you, beside you every day. And I said, yes, I need it.
Yes.
So we did a prayer of the Holy Spirit. We invited the Holy Spirit to come into my life. And that meant letting go a lot of things that I had been used to, relying upon myself to...
Mr. Fix-It, so to speak.
Correct, yeah.
We all know that. We've been there, done that.
That was difficult, to let go of a lot of things and put it in God's hands. Because I think the way that I was used to living was that I was basically fixing everything and repairing everything along the way and trying to set a path for my life that I had been used to doing for many, many years as a provider. So to let go of everything and to start a new life was one of the hardest things, but I'm so glad that I did that, because upon doing that I had a real awakening and a refreshing, and all pressure and all stresses and all anxieties and all worries were lifted off my shoulder. That from that day on, I remember coming home to Nicole that afternoon, and I told Nicole what had happened, and she looked at me as if I had seen an alien or something. And I said to her, look, I've had a change of life. I really have. And from that day on, I think it was about 3 years ago, she has seen a remarkable change, and all my friends and family have
John,
as well.
We'd be very interested in hearing about the change that Nicole saw, but right now we need to go to a break, so bear with me. We'll see you back right after the break.
Love, love, oh, till I be but breath of the Spirit flowing in me.
Welcome back to the Spirit of Life. I have been interviewing John Hendricks, and we will pick up on the point where you left off. John, welcome back. You mentioned that Nicole, your wife, noticed a difference, noticed a change in you. Can you maybe try to tease that out with us and explain what was it that she saw that was so different?
Sure. Well, perhaps if I can just take it one step back, if I can say that leading up to the birth of Noah, I was under quite a lot of pressure and stress. I was trying to rebuild my family and rebuild my business life as well. And at that time, interest rates were starting to go up. Business was starting to slow down a little bit. And I had a fairly significant commitment of property and development. I think at the time, my housing mortgage was $10,000 a month.
Wow.
And I think my interest commitment on properties was about $30,000 a month, every month.
Goodness.
Just to meet interest.
Yes.
So that probably gives you an idea of the type of pressure that I was under.
Indeed.
And Nicole, of course, had just had this beautiful child and needed help with, this new baby that was in our lives, and she felt that I wasn't giving perhaps the due time and support that I needed to, forever making excuses to be out of the house. But when the Holy Spirit was invited within, it was like someone turned the switch. It was like someone turned a switch from evil to good.
Oh.
It's like that switch went from evil to good. It was like someone hypnotised me. And from the moment that the awakening happened, I went home and I told Nicole, and of course she couldn't believe it, because she was used to getting defensive, sort of rejections and different things, I guess, happening in a relationship. And when I was fully committed to making the relationship work and letting go of all of the stresses and anxieties that created those problems, the financial problems, letting them all go, she was quite amazed, because she thought, well, hang on, you've worked hard all your life to build this up. How can you now let it all go? What are you, she wasn't concerned about our future. She was just more concerned that, what's wrong with you? Is this
Yes.
what are you doing? Is
Yes.
this the right thing? Are you sure that this is the right thing that
Yes.
you want to do?
Yeah, I imagine it would have quite an unusual impact with someone that's used to you being so geared up and on the go, and suddenly you just raise your hands up in the air and say, I let go, I surrender. And that would have been a remarkable change to experience as a wife in you, John.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. I let it go into God's hands. That's what I was led to believe and what I believed. And I put it all into God's hands. And I believed in Him that He would rebuild us up again and provide for us. And that was hard to do, because I had always relied upon myself to do that, not anyone else.
John, you said earlier that you had continued to go to church, but you weren't really present to it, from what I gathered. What was different now? Like a prayer? Okay, this friend did a prayer with you and she asked you if you wanted a close relationship with Jesus. How can something like that have such a remarkable impact or movement within you to change your whole perspective?
Sure. Look, I understand it might be difficult for people listening to this program to understand, but I can quite simply say that I had already tried everything in my own hands. I had tried everything. And I had experienced everything in life that I think life had to offer. And there wasn't really anything else that I needed to experience or do in life. So I was prepared to take that road, because I had firmly believed that I couldn't do it on my own.
Right.
I had tried to do it.
So it sounds like you suddenly came to a point of realization that there was someone or something else that you can lean on, or that you could call on, or that can see you, or is that the sort of thing? I'm just guessing
absolutely.
based on what you're saying.
It's like having a permanent friend
Yes.
sit on your shoulder, or a person, a parent, or someone that loves you incredibly strong, sitting within you, watching you, guiding you, pushing you, stopping you from doing things. It's an incredible inside feeling of absolutely no worries, no pressure, no anxiety, no stresses.
Yes.
It is just freedom within.
Yeah. And so from that I gather that there was a type of freedom for you, internal freedom, and an inner knowing that obviously you weren't on your own anymore, and that you could do it with someone that knew what they were doing or he is doing. So
absolutely,
is that the sort of thing?
It is, and yeah. I think it's important, the element of trust. You know, we need to trust God. We
yes.
need to trust God in our
yes.
movements, because He ultimately controls what happens in our lives if we allow Him to.
Yes, and we're going to have to go to a break again soon, John. But trusting God is not an easy thing to do, is it? From the human perspective, because you can't see Him. And so I'm interested to know, when we come back from the break, how you knew almost without doubt that you could trust God, you know, basically just after a prayer that had been said over you. So we will come back to pick up at that point, and you're watching The Spirit of Life, and we will see you after the break.
Love, love, oh, till I be but breath of the Spirit flowing in me.
Welcome back. You are watching The Spirit of Life, and I am interviewing John Hendricks. Welcome back, John. We left off by saying that you have a great trust in God now after a prayer that was prayed over you. I'm wondering, how does one trust God in their business conduct and professional conduct? So you're still running a company, John, is that right?
Yes, that's correct, yes. Well, at that time, when I had the eternal shift, I was fairly heavily entrenched in property and property development, and I had a fairly big business at that point.
Give us an example of the.
Well, we had a number of display homes. We had about 10, 15 staff. Mm-hmm. We had fairly significant commitments to about 100 odd blocks of land,
right.
Maybe 150 blocks of land that we had purchased, and our company was involved with another couple of hundred houses that were being built as well. So there was, you know, a fair bit of stress going on at that point, mm-hmm. trying to keep it all sort of motoring along, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And so how has this affected your business life, or conduct for that matter?
Sure. Well, I think it had to start with a new foundation. That was important. Yes. So when I had decided to let it all go and walk away, it all came toppling down on itself, because a lot of it had been built up so quickly and so fast, and all sort of self-serving. I guess it was all self-serving, just to serve our lifestyle and our means and purpose. But we decided that we would slow the business down or wind it down and then restart it again, which we did. Mm-hmm. No one lost their homes, and no one lost any money. Unfortunately, the company lost some money, of course, mm-hmm. lost a lot of its equity, unfortunately, mm-hmm. but nevertheless, those things needed to happen. That mm-hmm. was the pain and suffering that we needed to go through. But mm-hmm. within 6 months of winding everything down, mm-hmm.
During
that time, I really had no idea where everything was going to restart again.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the capital, mm-hmm. but fortunately I was able to find myself in another venture mm-hmm. where finance was guaranteed, mm-hmm. And that would help me rebuild the business mm-hmm. and of course rebuild my life mm-hmm. from that point on.
Mm-hmm. So what's different now? You're going to rebuild. Okay, before you rebuilt because you needed providence, you wanted career, you wanted success. What's different now? How are you going to rebuild? On what basis? And
well, firstly, I think it's important to say I probably don't have a large need and a self-desire to drive expensive cars or have expensive business class travel and things like that, and spend money on large gifts and on our own self-pleasure. So our lifestyle has reduced greatly down to, I guess you'd say, a normal lifestyle, you know, and we're happy with a normal existence. So therefore the need to have a large income to service that extreme lifestyle has reduced significantly. So there isn't that need to have that. So whatever we obtain from here on in is just a bonus to us at this point of time.
Okay. And with your personal life, how has the shift affected your personal relationships with your wife and others now? Sure.
Well, everyone says there's been a significant change in the way I conduct myself and the way my priorities are not just only myself or my family. I mean, they're obviously very important, but now I want to give something back to people, people who are not as fortunate as us, who perhaps haven't had as much of a fortunate life as we have. So I've spent a lot of time doing charity work, working for our parish, working for the church. I'd completed some fundraising for some Indian missions that required some funds earlier this year, and I'm actively involved in a number of events to raise money and to help people, and I get a lot of satisfaction, and so does my family out of doing that, Lucy.
Wow, it sounds to me like you are obviously very successful, whatever you turn your hands to, and it seems like you have redirected that energy. Instead of a self-focused and self-gratification agenda, if you like, gratifying agenda, you seem to have shifted that, and you're looking outwardly now more rather than looking at yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
And wondering, what can I do for John and for my immediate family? You now have extended your life to include the bigger community and the bigger family.
Yes.
Metaphorically speaking.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think, looking at that, John, obviously there's been a very profound movement and shift, an interior movement within you, and looking at you, you look the same. But I think if anyone knew you before and how you conducted your business, and know you now and how you conduct your business now, obviously they're going to see a very clear difference. And that's been proven by your wife Nicole and your immediate family, your mother and your daughters as well. I believe you mentioned that last time we spoke. And John, I want to thank you so much for sharing such an inspiring story of your life. It always excites me to hear stories, just like ordinary people's stories, because your story could be someone else's story that's watching tonight, and sometimes we do get trapped, don't we, into trying to acquire or accomplish our own agenda without looking outwardly. And it seems like that's what it was for you. But congratulations.
Thank you.
You have obviously responded to the insights and the revelations from God, and you're responding extremely well and doing some really good work in the community now. Thank you so much, John, and hopefully one day you'll come back and share with us more of your story. And that's the end of our program. You have been watching The Spirit of Life. My name is Lucy Pace, and I've been interviewing John Hendricks. Thank you, John. Next week, please stay tuned to our program next week. We have Mirella interviewing Father Peter Verwoerder, a very interesting man who has a great story, and he will be talking to Mirella about the visitations of Our Lady, Mother of Jesus, in Medjugorje. Thank you.